Hi, Sophie.
It's Webuary.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Snack Covenant episode 3456. And today, we're conducting a Madam Web retrospective.
And that's when someone reads out a Wikipedia article over video game footage. Sin, how do you feel about Madam Web?
Well, Sophie, in 1973, in the Amazon rainforest of Peru, a research team led by a pregnant Constance Webb discovers an unidentified spider species with rare healing properties.
Was anyone with her when she was researching spiders in the Amazon right before she died?
Well, the Wikipedia page continues to say, Ezekiel Sims, the man Constantine hired for protection and security, betrays the team, Sophie.
I saw Madam Web in an empty theatre on Valentine's Day of 2024.
Okay.
My understanding is that this was not a unique experience. But when I say I saw Madam Web in an empty theatre, I need to be clear about what kind of empty theatre it actually was.
Oh my god.
This is the empty theatre I saw Madam Web in.
Did they really? Is this a normal theater in Australia, Sophie?
It has 4 tiers of seats. It has red velvet carpet. It has an enormous screen.
It has a chandelier. What?
So yeah, a year ago to the day, I walked into this room and I said, "One adult for Madam Web, please." And when I entered the room, I was greeted by this sight.
Wow. You were literally the only person there.
I was the only person there, and it was a sublime experience. As I left the theatre, I ran into a woman outside who was clearly high. And she said, "Oh, what did you see?" And I said, "I saw Madam Web." And she went, "Oh, that's a really good movie." So I feel like, of all the movies based on Marvel Comics,
Yeah.
Madam Web has had the most profound impact on me. What Madam Web is kind of most known for at this point is not actually the movie itself. It's the bizarre press tour that Dakota Johnson did, where she didn't really seem to know anything about the film or care about it at all. And she also appeared to have, like, a quite active contempt for the concept of superhero movies in general.
What % of Marvel movies have you seen? Let's be real. And this isn't meant as a negative. Like, again, just...
4%.
4%.
Which is like 15 minutes of one.
Can you name the 3 Spider-Man Tom Holland movies?
Yeah.
As someone who owns the Madam Web DVD, right, it is fairly bereft of extra content. Almost like they didn't want to admit to being involved with it. But it does have the, like, standard press kit interviews that you usually get with these DVDs.
Okay.
In those, like, promotional interviews on the disc, Dakota Johnson is talking like she has been briefed.
I was drawn to this project because I was very intrigued by the prospect of a female superhero's superpower being her mind.
At one point, she did know what she was supposed to say, and then she appears to have just deliberately gone fuck it during the press tour.
Harry, Spider-Man, and the Goblet of Man.
So we're going to get into why this was important to me.
Right.
But before we get there, we need some context. So, Sin,
Okay, yeah.
what do you know about these, like, weird Sony Spider-Man spin-offs that don't have Spider-Man in them? Because you've seen, I think, all of them?
Yeah, I've seen Venom. I've seen Madam Web. What other ones are there?
Craven.
Yeah.
Morbius.
I've seen them. Oh, who can forget?
Yeah, okay, you've seen all of them then. I've also seen all of them, which makes this the only cinematic universe I've seen everything in. Do you know about, like, the Marvel bankruptcy situation and why Sony owns stuff and why the MCU started with Iron Man and all these other sort of, like, things?
Because that's the ones they could buy, right?
Yeah, so in the 90s, Marvel was in incredibly bad financial shit.
Mm-hmm.
And to stay afloat, it sold its what were at the time like its A-list properties.
Mm-hmm.
So it sold like X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was such a big deal when Spider-Man came back in Civil War. Like, there were crowds erupting into applause when he showed up in the trailer, because prior to that, Sony had controlled the rights to Spider-Man, right? So what has happened is, even though there is this like joint custody situation around Spider-Man, that's not true of all of the other characters that they got when they got Spider-Man. So they've created this universe that started off being called Sony's Marvel Universe, which was SMU.
Okay.
Then it became the Sony Universe of Marvel characters.
Sony SUMC.
Then it became the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel characters, which is my favorite because it spells SPUMC.
Okay.
And they eventually settled on the Sony Spider-Man Universe, or SU.
Very, very good acronyms. Good job.
Now, Sin, as someone with a well-publicized hatred of Spider-Man as a character,
Yeah.
how do you feel about these movies where they've managed to completely remove Spider-Man from the story?
I feel like it improved those movies because adding Spider-Man, the most overrated character ever, would have dragged them down even more. And they would have a negative rating on IMDb.
That's true. Spider-Man movies are not known for doing well critically or commercially.
Okay, so Spider-Man, except for the Tobey one, that's a cool one. He's fine. But all the other ones, they're like, ooh, look at me. Oh no, I got bit by a spider. Ooh, I have powers now. You know, and it's just not my vibe.
You also had issues with the way that he eats fries in an ostentatious way.
Oh my god, yes, that was in the other Spider-Man movie that my boyfriend really likes. That was actually not that bad, but it would have been better without any Spider-Mans in it. Yeah, he was eating fries in such a blasé way. I did not appreciate it. That is not how you eat fries. And it just turned me off from the movie completely, you know?
So you just mentioned there that you like the idea of Into the Spider-Verse, but you think it shouldn't have Spider-Man in it.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what Sony have done here. They've created a Spider-Man shared universe that does not have Spider-Man in it.
Mm-hmm.
So these movies should appeal to you, surely.
They would appeal to me if they were not made horribly, if they were not unwatchable, and if they were not completely just like ridiculously idiotic. And the only redeemable one is Madam Web, because there's actually like good acting, some humor, a little bit of a like intense like storyline going on, some tension. None of the other ones have any of that. They're just like bleh, you know?
One of the major criticisms that's leveled at the Sony Marvel Spider Universe pictures of Sony is that they quote-unquote feel like something from 2003, but like, I don't really have problems with superhero movies from the early 2000s. They were generally fine.
They were good. Even Catwoman, that was good. I don't care what anyone says.
I wouldn't call it good.
Better than Morbius.
It was better than Morbius. These were movies that, like, you know, you were a teenager and you just went out and watched them, and they were cool, and then you immediately forgot about them and went home.
Yeah.
But what's happened is that because Marvel is this absolute behemoth, suddenly, like, the Morbius movie has this weight of expectations on it that I don't feel like it would have had in an earlier time. If this had come out in 2003, and I'd seen it as a teenager, I wouldn't go and be like, yo, Morbius fucking sucked. I'd just be like, okay, that was a movie.
Oh, definitely.
Like, did you know Blade was based on a Marvel comic when you saw it the first time?
No, I didn't even know what Marvel comic was when I saw those movies.
Because, like, when I first saw Blade as, like, a 13, 14-year-old, I had no idea it was based on anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really weird because I'd seen the animated adaptation of the comic that it is based on, but Blade's not in that.
Dolores, there's a shameful secret about myself which I have kept hidden from you all this time.
How could you possibly keep a secret from me, darling?
So, of all of these characters that Sony spun off into its Pictures universe of Marvel, Madam Web is the only one who didn't have her own comic book.
Interesting.
Like, she was a character in Spider-Man, but she never had her own standalone series. So, did you know who Madam Web was, like, prior to this movie?
Yeah. Of course I did, because I used to watch those Saturday morning or whatever cartoons with like X-Men, Spider-Man, and whoever man. And in I think in Spider-Man there was Madam Web, who was like an older lady, I don't know, predicting the future or something.
Yeah, that's where I knew her from as well. It is genuinely weird to me that they made a spin-off about Madam Web in the first place. So when I think about like the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery, like you would think, based on how that character is in the comics and the animated series and everything, she would have been like the Nick Fury.
Uh-huh.
She would have been like the
Yeah.
one who like appears and goes, "Oh no, your destiny lies elsewhere," or something like that.
Yeah.
And she's like telling Craven he's got to meet up with Venom or something.
Yeah.
So the fact that they made her the main character is like so strange to me. So Dakota Johnson, do you say she's slightly too young for the character?
Yeah, slightly. Dakota Johnson's in her 30s and the character is in her like 80s.
Yeah, so this is set up as a prequel to the Spider-Man movies. It actually ends with Spider-Man being born.
Yeah.
Madam Web in the movie canonically is 30 years old. So even if we stretch this out and say it's like, okay, he's already left high school, he's gone to college, he's working as a reporter, she'd be like 50.
Yeah.
And I know Hollywood is bad with age, but
Yeah.
the pre-existing Madam Web character is clearly far, far over 50.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll get into like some like deleted concepts from the movie, but there is like concept art of a reasonably like 50-ish looking Madam Web character.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So like this concept art exists. I don't know if that is supposed to be Dakota Johnson or it's just like draw a woman. So you can see like she's nowhere near as old as the version that we were familiar with, but she does look like she's about like 50.
Yeah, she has gray hair and everything.
So it's possible that they were like intending there to be this like 50-year-old Madam Web at one point, possibly played by Dakota Johnson in a grey wig. So this movie is actually, unfortunately for her, the theatrical debut of director S.J. Clarkson.
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure why S.J. Clarkson did this. So like S.J. Clarkson, this is the first movie she's worked on, so you don't really get a sense of like, what are her interests as an artist? What draws her to projects? Because prior to this, she'd been a TV director. But I looked at what she'd done previously, and she'd worked on Jessica Jones.
Okay.
And this has like it's not the same as Jessica Jones, but you can see there's some connective tissue there. This is not a badly directed movie.
No.
I think the problems the movie has aren't necessarily down to the way that the individual scenes have been directed. It's down to like, clearly this has been cut to ribbons and just kind of stuck back together in a random order with like spit and bubblegum. Like it does not work coherently. And yeah, this also has Sydney Sweeney in it, who's probably like the biggest name attached to it now. She wouldn't have been as famous at the time she signed on for it. So she's come out recently and basically said, yeah, I just agreed to do this to like build a relationship with Sony. And she does give the performance of someone who has agreed to be in something.
Who are you? What is going on?
I saw her in Immaculate. She did a much better job.
She is very, very good. She's not very good in this, but also she has nothing to do. Like, we'll get into this when we start talking about the characters, but like, I find the character of Madam Web herself is honestly like quite consistent in a way that resonated with me. But then the three girls that she's looking after, they are written like the barest sketch of a cartoon character. Like there's just like the nice one, the punk one, and the smart one. Yeah. And it's like, how do you know she's smart? Because she's doing calculations in her head.
Doesn't she have glasses or something?
She doesn't have glasses, but she has a shirt that says, "I eat math for breakfast."
Ah!
And like when the villain is climbing the wall, she's like, frictional force does not allow that.
That's how you know she's smart.
It's appalling. The rebellious one, how do we know she's rebellious? She has a skateboard. And then the nice one, how do we know she's the nice one? She's slightly timid, and she mentions wanting to be a Girl Scout. So on the DVD, there are these cast and crew interviews, and you get these like very in-depth discussions with the three women who play the girls Madam Web is looking after. And they start saying things like, yeah, each of them has their own journey. No, they don't.
No.
Like, their journey is literally she kidnaps them, she leaves them in the woods, and then they go to a motel. And then, like, she abandons them for probably, like, 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, she goes to the Amazons.
And then she just comes back again. Yeah, they do not have a journey. They are nothing characters. There's this whole thing about, like, yeah, it's cool. It's, like, empowered women kicking butt. No, they don't. Like, they get these fight scenes in flash forwards that are deliberately edited to look like weird dream vision, so you don't really get a good look at them.
Mm-hmm.
They look a lot like, if you're familiar with Birds of Prey, not the movie, but the early 2000s TV series.
Yeah, is it with the Batman kid or something?
Yeah. You know, I don't think things need to be technically good for you to vibe with them.
Uh-huh.
And I do vibe with the early 2000s Birds of Prey series, despite realizing it's not good. So honestly, yeah, if you made a movie of like these flash forward sequences, even if it were made for like half the budget of Madam Web, I would probably quite like it. One of those flash forward sequences, by the way, it literally includes footage from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Ah, okay.
The three girls in this, the canonical name for them is the Boo Crew.
We have a group chat. It's called the Boo Crew.
They called themselves that on set, and it's become the official name within the incredibly small Madam Web fandom. And yeah, it's like, it's so strange watching the behind-the-scenes stuff and then watching the movie, because they seem like they're actually friends off camera, but then when you watch the movie, I said a science thing. Well, I'm hungry. This is a bad idea, guys.
So sad about Martha Stewart. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Bring us some sandwiches. Did you guys see that diner? You will not like me when I'm hangry.
When you were looking into the future, did you see us in the middle of nowhere?
Don't do dumb things.
So this movie is set up as a prequel. And it's simultaneously a prequel to the Spider-Man movies that did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like, Spider-Woman team-up series that didn't. But it's not clear what Spider-Man this is supposed to be a prequel to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were discussions when the movie was being made that, like, the reshoots that happened were about changing the time it was set in. This has never been confirmed by anyone, but apparently it was set in 1993.
Oh, interesting.
And they couldn't really decide on what year it was set, because that would then determine the Spider-Man that this is a prequel to.
Oh my god.
This movie being set in 1993 would sort of line up with Andrew Garfield.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's like a teenager in the early to mid 2010s. So it sort of lines up. He could have been born in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But this being set in 2003 implies it's the origin of the Tom Holland Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And there's further evidence that supports this, because we've got concept art of Madam Web from very, very early development, which I will now show you. I know you immensely dislike Spider-Man, so you'll just have to take my word for it.
Okay.
That the Spider-Man that Ezekiel Sims is fighting there, that's the Tom Holland one.
How do you know? Is it the eyes?
No, all the Spider-Man suit designs are slightly different.
Oh, wow. Good job, Sophie. Detective Sophie.
It wasn't me. No, I didn't
good
think of that.
job,
It was a bunch of people on
whoever.
Reddit. I found the motel. All right, that was hard.
There, you found the motel. Yes.
I found the motel. You also notice that the concept art, Spider-Man's fighting Ezekiel Sims in this.
Yeah.
It's technically incorrect to say there is no Spider-Man in the movie because he is a baby at the very, very end of it.
That's true. But he's not Spider-Man yet.
No.
Wait, he's not Spider-Man yet. But the Spider-Mans don't exist yet. So the Spider-Girls are Spider-Man before Spider-Man is born.
Her web connects them all. This is something that struck me immediately upon watching it the first time, which is that Spider-Man is going to become Spider-Man in a version of New York where there is already a documented history of people dressing in Spider-Man outfits.
Yeah.
And like causing mass destruction. Ezekiel Sims blows up a car with a hand grenade in the middle of New York while dressed as a spider.
Yeah.
And like, according to the visions, there's going to be these 3 other spider people at least running around New York fighting crime. Like, we'll say at least 10 years before Peter Parker is bitten by a spider.
Mm-hmm.
It does so many odd things with continuity that I think it was probably for the best that they didn't pin this down.
Yeah.
But the other thing about the inclusion of the Tom Holland Spider-Man in the concept art is, like, this kind of implies that maybe the original story was that Ezekiel Sims isn't trying to kill the 3 girls. He's trying to stop Spider-Man being born because he knows Spider-Man will kill him. To the point where it almost becomes like the Terminator.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I get the impression this probably was always supposed to be 2003.
Okay.
The most non-2003 thing in it is that she's able to very casually just get on a plane to Peru relatively soon after 9/11 while being the primary suspect in a kidnapping.
Yeah.
I think we need to actually talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Sin, how do you feel about Madam Web?
Despite being hacked up, it's well directed. It's watchable, it's interesting, it's funny, it's cute. It's a good, solid superhero movie that's not boring. And it has likable characters despite there being spider people, you know?
It's a superhero movie that is good despite the presence of superheroes, is what you're saying.
Specifically spider superheroes.
Okay, yeah. There are 4 of them in it, though.
Yeah, and that's...
There are 5 of them in this movie.
And that's how good the movie is, Sophie, even though there's 5 spider people. But Sophie, you have a very good theory as to why we relate to this movie. And I'd like you to tell us about it.
Well, Sin, I'm glad you asked. Madam Web defies conventional genre, and it defies conventional structure and conventional character arcs. And my thesis in this retrospective, which is not taken from Wikipedia because no one else thinks this except me, is that Madam Web is the birth of a new genre that I call Auntcore.
Auntcore!
I think we really need to talk about the character of Madam Web and how fucking bizarre she actually is in this.
Okay.
So my notes here just describe her as surly, aloof, and bored.
Pretty much, yeah. She's cool is what you're saying.
What interests me specifically about Madam Web is that it seems to set up a character arc that doesn't happen. So the first thing she does in this movie is that she's rude to a small child and criticizes their drawing while in a hospital.
Yeah.
She goes to this baby shower and she refers to the baby as it. And, like, you see the drawing that the child gave her that she criticized the child for doing. And it's a drawing of a family and it says, like, mum, dad, me, right?
Yeah.
And, like, in any other movie, that would be setting up that she's going to settle down with someone. And, like, the way it is written and the way it is played, it looks like it's setting up a romance between her and Uncle Ben. Except, I guess, in, like, a kind of meta way, because we know how this all ends, it's not allowed to happen. She can't ever get with him, even though the movie is kind of pointing in that direction. Like you mentioned, this has jokes in it.
Yeah.
To me, the jokes in this actually work because they just seem like a natural extension of this character.
Yeah.
Is he pressing the burgers again?
Yeah, they're ruined now.
She's not doing like, oh, he's behind me, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Turn to camera. Like,
No, she's talking to herself because
Yeah.
she's forced into social situations she doesn't want to be in.
What am I supposed to do with this?
Just put it in your pocket and then throw it away somewhere else.
I can't even fold it. It's like cardboard.
There's this meme about her, like, being unable to open a Pepsi can. Because if you follow her, there's 2 scenes in this where she's holding a Pepsi can and she's just kind of like scratching the top of it.
okay.
It looks like she's trying to open it by puncturing the top with her fingernail. But, like, to me, that doesn't come across as her trying to open it. It comes across as, like, she doesn't want to be here. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. So she's grabbed the nearest thing and she's, like, fidgeting with it.
We're saving that for one of the games.
Games.
When they sit down to play them, like, she clearly just does not want to be there, and there's this person walking around with hors d'oeuvres, and she just grabs a whole lot of them off the plate and shoves them in her mouth to just give herself something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is like queen shit. But what I think is interesting is, like, when there's actual emergencies going on, she's not joking around. Like, when there is an emergency, she's just talking like a normal person.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When Ezekiel Sims starts climbing on the ceiling in the train tunnel, they react like any normal person would, which is to say, wait, he's climbing on the ceiling, how did he do that? As opposed to, like, he climbs now? He climbs now!
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the villain?
All right, let's talk about the villain. He was a little weird. He wanted to kill people because he dreamed about them killing him. And so that's his arc. He's like, I'm gonna kill some women because I saw them in a dream.
This character is, like, absolute nonsense. He makes absolutely no sense at all. So, when this movie came out, a lot of people, one might say everyone who saw it, was very, very aware that the villain of this movie has been quite badly dubbed in pretty much every scene he has.
You have no idea of the torment and torture of dying over and over again.
So, actors in movies get dubbed all the time. This happens because basically movie sets are very noisy, and if you want clean dialogue, it's probably simpler to just get the actors to come back and re-record their lines later on. It's totally normal. There are whole movies where every single line of dialogue was recorded later on and you didn't notice it.
Yeah, yeah.
Tahar Rahim in Madam Web. I don't even know where to begin. This is not a case of, like, the lips don't match what he's saying. It's a case of, like, his lips are not moving while he's talking. Like, if you watch the scenes where he's doing his NSA surveillance stuff, no joke, about 90% of the dialogue happens when he's either facing away from camera or just not on camera, and it will cut back to him for one line.
I didn't know we'd be targeting teenagers.
They're teenagers now, but in the future, they have powers, and they will try to destroy me. I came from nothing, less than nothing. I will not give up everything I've built and have my life cut short.
You know, when I was watching it, and when he was on camera speaking, his, like, lips and face did not match what was coming out when it was dubbed, and it felt very like, oh, I'm watching a fancy international movie, everyone. So I appreciated that aspect of Madam Web.
Well, Tahar Rahim is, like, a famous international actor. He's, like, won awards and stuff.
There you go. You know, maybe it was intentional.
There's scenes where he's talking, like, it almost looks like it's made entirely of reaction shots.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing their best to not have him on screen when he's talking, because looks like pretty much everything he said has been re-recorded later. I feel sorry for whoever was in charge of it, because, like, there's no way to make that look normal. It reminds me a lot of a movie called Robo-Vampire.
Okay.
And, like, I think quite a few people who watch us will be familiar with Robo-Vampire.
Okay.
For reference, Robo-Vampire is a movie by Schlock Auteur Godfrey Ho, and it is made out of 2 different movies.
Okay.
He shot half a movie about an incredibly cheap RoboCop knockoff fighting vampires.
Okay.
And then he's made it feature length by inserting scenes from a completely unrelated film about drug smugglers.
Okay.
And to try to make the two halves of this movie connect with each other, he edits conversations between characters from the two different movies.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a different time of day on a different kind of film stock with different lighting, framed completely differently. And they'll just talk back and forth that way.
We must get her out at all costs. We're finished if she talks.
That's what every Ezekiel Sims scene in this movie is like. Like, can you tell me what Ezekiel Sims' motivation is?
He thinks the women from his dream are out to get him. And, I don't know much beyond that, I'll be honest.
He says that they're gonna take away everything he's worked for. What did he do?
Oh, what did he do? He killed a woman! Yeah, I remember that.
This character, right, for reference, Ezekiel Sims is actually a Spider-Man character, like he's in the comics.
Okay.
In the comics, he is a businessman.
Uh-huh.
In this movie, he has agreed to provide security for Madam Web's mum while she looks for spiders, right? He then betrays her, shoots everyone, takes the spider, and he says something like, "No one cared about my family when our village was starving."
Right.
30 years later, he has a New York penthouse.
Yeah.
I don't know what is supposed to have happened between the jungle and then, particularly given that he does not appear to have aged.
Yeah, he like developed, he took the spider serum or whatever from the Amazons and developed it into something and sold it for money, and now he's rich but also doesn't age.
No, but here's the thing, right? What you've described would make sense if anyone in the movie ever said that.
No, because it's like, it's undercover, Sophie. We can't let anybody know about this.
No, but he's the other... right. I would completely buy that, like, the spider powers stopped him aging. Except in the flash forwards, which are 10 years in the future, right?
Uh-huh.
He's aged. He's got grey hair. He's made up to look older. So, like, in between 1973 and 2003, he either hasn't aged at all, or he's supposed to have aged, but they do it by giving him a haircut. But then in, like, I'm assuming 2013, his hair has gone completely grey. And he does say, like, during those sequences, like, they stole my spider, so maybe the spider venom he had to keep regularly taking it to stay young. But, like, none of this is ever, like, stated on screen at any point. Like, he's literally... It's literally exactly what I described. He is providing security for someone in the Amazon. And then 30 years later, he is living in a lavish New York penthouse.
Yes.
And starts talking about, they're going to take away everything I worked for and everything I built. It's like, what did you do? Because it's not... In the comics, he is a businessman. In the movie, I don't think they ever specify what he is. Another odd thing about his plans, right, is that we see these flash forwards to what he would do if Madam Web didn't stop him. When he's doing things like blowing up a car with a hand grenade, he's at least wearing a costume. There's actually a very funny bit during the action scene at the end where in his full costume, he escapes by jumping onto the front of a taxi, and the taxi driver's in there and she just looks at him like, ooh, it's a bit weird. But then, like, other times, he's just doing this in broad daylight without a mask on. So, like, even if he succeeds, he's going to jail for a long time. It's a very, very odd film, but it's still... It holds together, I think, entirely because of Dakota Johnson. So, like, in any other movie, all of the scenes about, like, I don't like children, I don't understand this drawing of mum, dad, and me, I don't like baby showers, I don't want to talk about babies, I don't want to talk about your stupid wedding. Like, all of that would be building up to, oh, someone's going to come along and melt her heart, and she's going to, like, embrace all of these things she was rejecting before. And that doesn't happen.
No.
It's the story of someone who is being pressured into becoming a mother when what she really wants is to be someone's cool aunt.
Yeah.
Because by the end of it, like, she's adopted the 3 girls, but the 3 girls are entirely independent at that point.
Yeah.
Like, they're literally going out and buying food and bringing it back to her.
Yeah.
They haven't had to grow up, like, as children around her. Like, they haven't had those fights they've had with their own parents. Like, she just becomes, like, someone that they flock to, and that's sort of, like, that's a very specific thing that, like, a lot of people do go through. Like, it's like you reach sort of, like, your mid-30s, and you realize that you don't want children, and you're never going to have children. But there is a part of you that just kind of wants, like, teenagers to think that you're cooler than their parents.
Yeah.
When this movie came out, like, I was with my friend Janelle.
Yes.
Who is, like, 7 years older than me. And then 2 friends of ours came up to us who are, like, almost half our age. They're, like, kind of in their, like, early 20s. And they asked us, hey, do you want to go to the beach with us one day?
Uh-huh.
And it's like, oh, right, cool. We're, like, the aunts in this situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you sort of have this, like, respect for us and think that we're cooler than your parents, even though we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what Madame Web is. She's someone who has, like, this whole movie is her having this, like, early onset midlife crisis.
Yeah.
She's not in control of anything. Like, she steals a taxi, she abducts people, she leaves them in a forest. She dumps them on her friend and goes to Peru to, like, reconcile with her mother. Yeah. The whole thing is a mess, but at the end of it, they're like, you're so cool, Madame Web.
You know everything, Madame Web. Yeah.
You're so much cooler than my real mom.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, that's, like, the 35-year-old woman equivalent of getting the super soldier serum.
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
Because it's like, she starts this movie with this, like, visceral dislike of children and babies.
Yeah.
And she ends it with a still visceral dislike of children and babies. But she's found a family unit anyway that doesn't involve those things. Like, that's kind of the relationships that you start building as you get older. Again, talking about, like, the performance that Dakota Johnson is giving in this. There's this scene where the girls disobey her and they go to this diner and she has to rescue them. And what she says is, she says,
you're so impulsive and entitled and you don't listen. We didn't mean to. Whatever, don't even say anything.
That is coming from the woman who just abandoned them in the woods in the middle of the night and drove off, right? But the way that she is delivering the line, it comes across as, like, she knows that this is her fault. It's this thing that, like, you'll notice people do, like, when they finally become adults and they're around children and they realize they can do this, which is that she's like, I am the adult in the room, therefore, when I say things, they're true. So she's just asserting this version of events to them that I get the impression she doesn't actually believe that. So I found that whole aspect of it, like, genuinely really interesting. Because, like, I have a friend who was, like, 23. She was exactly as amazed and enraptured as the characters in Madame Web were when I showed her that she could find things in Word by pressing Control F.
That's amazing.
To her, that was this, like, advanced knowledge that you would only have after, like, decades of being a computer specialist. But it's like, oh my god, Control F! How did you know?
I've never said this before in my entire life, but you're a good teacher.
And I feel like that's what Madame Web is about.
Well, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Ezekiel Sims, for listening through your captured NSA technology. Which looks far too advanced for 2003. Also, shout out to Ezekiel Sims for employing a single person to watch every single security camera and 911 call in the entire state of New York. I paid you a fortune for this. Thank you, NSA agent 97234766527. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
See you next time.
Thank you, Ben, who is looking forward to being an uncle soon. Actually, yeah, like, he's doomed to die. And, Peter Parker's mother is also doomed to die. And the guy who's cooking the hamburgers at the baby shower is also, he dies. So if anything, she's just like this angel of death.
Say bye, Sophie.
Bye!